Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the boring stuff of taxation and the Green New Deal and how the tax mix will be changing quite drastically and radically over the next 20 odd years, maybe even a bit less. So here's the rub. The Western governments are already bankrupt. They're already gazillions of dollars in hock. All Western governments are propping up standards of living such as they are by borrowing. Now, I think that's a price the globalists are paying to implement the project that they want, implement the world and create the world that they want. And so that debt's just going to get written off. It's just the price of implementing the globalist project, and so they're happy to pay given that they get what they want in the end. Now, and what they want is that everything that we buy, use, rent, eat, live in, anything and everything that we do must be purchased or rented or acquired from the globalist monopolies. I think that's what they're heading towards. I can't perceive any other. I mean, competition is definitely something they don't want. So I think that's really the end game. And things like universal basic income or an approximation of that will be how we all live in little pods and boxes. But coming back to the tax take, and I'll talk about tax generally, but specifically, if you look at the taxes on petroleum as you fill the tank of your car, and taxes on, say, coal, natural gas, and so on, the classic sort of fossil fuels, which power 85% of the world's energy, by the way, if those are replaced, or when they're replaced, because they seem to be almost unswerving in their determination to replace fossil fuels, and given none of them believe in the climate change alarmism, you've got to wonder what the end game is there as well. I think it's effect just a way of rationing energy and forcing us to pay citizenry to pay high prices. To the well-to-do, it doesn't matter if their electricity bill goes up from $2,000 or $3,000 a year to $10,000 a year. They don't really care. They're wealthy enough where it's they can deal, the shrug of the shoulders, and they've got it dealt with. But for families that are running a pretty tight budget, which is most folks in the West today, especially after COVID, and the price of real estate and rent and so on, which again is artificially pushed on the population without their consent, that the cost of even the basic electricity bill is going to be tough to meet. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But most governments, Western governments, are 15 to 25%, depending on which one, but 15 to 25% of revenues, taxation revenues, total tax collection, comes from a tax on fossil fuels or the up and downstream effect of fossil fuels, which, if you then include in the wider thing, is about 40% of the tax take. For example, there's no fossil fuels. You don't buy a car, you can't afford an electrical car, nor can you afford the electricity required to charge it, so you can only use public transport, that sort of thing. So so that all the taxes to do with cars and the people that work there and work manufacturing cars, that sort of thing, that's all going to disappear. And so it's going to be a radical sort of realignment of the Western economies, and how are they going to make up, Western governments, how are they going to make up for the very substantial loss of taxation revenue? Now, they've either got to substantially reduce services, such as, if you go to a hospital or something, fuck off, buddy. You go somewhere and die, and you just don't get, those sort of services, or the schools won't exist, or the roads will be, and the public infrastructure will be so fucked up that nobody would want to use it, and things like that. So they can reduce services and reduce the money they spend on services. I'm not sure they necessarily do that, but that's, of course, an option. Or they go borrowing money. That wouldn't work indefinitely. So they've got to think of other things to tax. Now, as Western people are getting poorer, and very quickly getting poorer, through much higher cost of living, then what can they tax exactly, that Western governments, where can they find the lost revenue? Because remember, fossil fuels are all gone in another 20 years, and all the tax revenue, up to 40% that comes directly or indirectly from fossil fuels, that's disappeared into the ether. So governments have to find alternative sources of tax. I think it's going to go along the lines of unoccupied bedrooms. They're going to say, okay, 2 people live in that house. You got 3, for example. You got 3 bedrooms. You're a couple. You use 1 bedroom. There's 2 bedrooms you're not using. We're going to tax you X amount for those bedrooms. Now, if you want to move to a 1-bedroom shoebox apartment, well, hey, that's up to you. No one's stopping you. But if you stay here, you have to pay a shitload of fucking tax. But no one's stopping you from moving. It's your decision. It's up to you. No one's telling you what to do. So I think they'll go down that path, and empty houses will probably be taxed. There'll be the tax mix on food will change. There'll be huge taxes on meat, for example. Anything they don't want you to eat or force you into using, they'll just tax the alternatives heavily. So, meat will be 1,000% tax, whereas, crickets and bugs will have no tax on them. But it's up to you what you eat. No one's stopping you from eating, beef or something of that. If your choice is to eat crickets, well, that's up to you. No one's making you do it. They'll try all that crap. So I think they're going to change the tax mix. And they're going to have to. I mean, it's not a matter of will they. They're going to have to. That's just too much revenue they're losing when fossil fuels go out the window. So they'll have to change the tax mix and start the thinking of other things they can tax. Maybe income tax be very high. But they have to make up the tax in shortfall, the shortfall in tax rather, and they can't do it just by cutting all services. Or maybe they'll cut it by saying only brown and black people can have services and white people can't. So maybe they'll do something like that. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, given what they're doing already. I mean, I can't look at a program on TV or news or anything that isn't almost hysterically denouncing white people simply for being white. It's non-stop. It's just an endless barrage, and paid for by white people's taxes and delivered, approved, and signed off by straight white male politicians, for fuck's sake. So really we need to think about the tax going forward. Now, if you look at implementing the Green New Deal, particularly with current technology, and technology will change, and I'm sure that'll change how the Green New Deal, if it does end up going ahead. I hope there's some sort of revolution that stops it in the meantime, but if it does go ahead, technology will automatically change how it's implemented and how it's applied and so on. Maybe one day there's be solar panels invented that automatically store energy for 24 hours, for example, or have a much higher conversion rate of solar to energy. If those things were to occur, and there's no reason to say that they won't, some stage they won't, then that would be a huge game changer. And fossil fuels again, would be replaced simply by dramatic advances in technology. And that may happen. I think it will at some point. So why we need to change from fossil fuels isn't clear at the moment, but the globalists are certainly hell-bent on forcing the West to change, whilst doing nothing about India and China, who are opening up electrical, coal-fired electrical plants all over the place. So why the West has to go through this is quite beyond me. Other than some ideological madness or a sinister intent to reduce our standard of living. Now, on the matter of usage of electricity, we're not intensive electricity users, and we've got fortunately we're in a house that gets good breezes and shade from the sun from trees, and so we don't. Maybe a few days in the height of summer, we get hot inside. In winter, we use gas heating, which for us is quite economical. But we sort of took the view of, could we, as the price of gas went up, price of electricity rather went up, and it has here, could we change the way we used electricity in order to keep more or less the same bill. They went up a little bit, but so we did things like putting heavier curtains on windows, things like that to keep heat in. So, and just running the heater for well, it's gas, but running the heater for a couple of hours in the morning, but not using any electrical heaters in any of the other rooms. Things like say washing clothes, using the clothes washing machine to working out where the off-peak times were. So I think between like 10:30 and 5:30 in the morning or something like that. It's the off-peak, and also on weekends. So the price of energy is about 40% less at those times. We try and use electrical appliances, the more energy intensive electrical appliances during those times. And we tried, say, things like bulk cooking on the weekend. So we just need to do a quick heating up and things like that, just thinking ahead. On a colder day, we might put on an extra layer of clothing, for example, or in summer, switching to cold cuts and salads, and so on. So looking at, well, where are we using energy and where are the most intensive uses, whether the equipment be an intensive energy use or for that matter, the time of day, is it a peak demand time and so on. So we looked at that and found that we could really reduce the energy bill, or not reduce, because the price of energy was going up faster than our reduction in use of energy was. So the electricity bill was higher, but not by any appreciable amount. Say instead of $100, it was $105, $107, that type of thing. So by changing our behaviour and the way we went about things, we could substantially reduce the amount of energy. Now, not everyone's like that. Some folks just in the sort of street their energy usage, usage of air conditioners and that sort of thing is the same as it was. If it's a hot day, they put the air conditioner on. That's it. They haven't changed their behaviour really at all, as far as I can tell. So their energy bill, electricity bill, is going through the roof, but they seem prepared to take the pain. And it's a quality of life issue here. If you're hot, why not put the air conditioner on? You've got an air conditioner, why not use it? That sort of thing. But they're unprepared to change their behaviour in order to reduce the energy bill. And their view is, well, why should they? The price is artificially high and it was out of their control. It was forced on them. Why should they have to go without in order to reduce the bill? I do understand that sentiment, by the way, but I made just some odd suggestions about, well, what have you thought about this, or what about that, or bulk cooking on weekends or only washing on the no, why should we do that? If they've got one article of clothing needs to be washed, just one, instead of keeping it in a clothes to be washed bin or something like that, they'll just set the washing machine to go on that one item. So they're not doing themselves any favors, and sometimes people who I think really aren't well to do at all, on a hot day, they hit the air conditioning, they'll have it run all day, and then they're scrambling to pay the bill when it falls due. So, I think by a little bit of changing your behaviour, you can reduce the bill. And we've tried it here. I'm not saying I liked it; it was a little inconvenient, but it did work and it was successful. So certainly worth thinking about for people on tight budgets. No, we weren't on a tight budget. We didn't have to do it. I took it from the point of view, is it possible? And it is. You've been Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.